This was when I was in the 4th grade. It was 15 years ago. At that time, I used to play with a girl named Yamanaka. Even back then, games were the only thing kids did. Yamanaka didn't have a game console because his parents wouldn't allow it, but instead he knew many things to play outside. For example, he used a wooden stick that he picked up to hit a rock with and see how many times he could make it fly across the creek out of 10 times. Yamanaka and I met in a new class in the 4th grade, and I had always been a game kid, so that kind of thing was new and interesting to me. Also, Yamanaka knew a lot of places to play. For example, an outlet where sewage flows out into an estuary. It's an earthen pipe more than 3 meters high. We would go there when the water was not flowing and explore the inside. Or under a power distribution tower at the foot of a small mountain. In hindsight, either of these places would have been a source of offense if the school had found out, but we really knew our stuff. So after school, the two of us would ride around on our bicycles and go to various places in the town. It brings back memories. Yamanaka was a good guy in his own way. He never said anything that people didn't like, and he took care of me in many ways, even if it was in a childish way. Now that I know, I can understand that. But he didn't always have an allowance, so it was my role to buy him ice cream, or drinks or something. Oh, I'll cut to the chase. It was summer vacation, and we went to a shrine that was located far outside of our elementary school district. It was a small place. I don't think there was a Shinto priest or anything. The doors of the shrine were closed. The reason why we went there was because Yamanaka told us that there was an ant lion in the sandy area under the shrine. You see, the shrine is on stilts. When I crawled under it, I found a fine brown sand with a few dents in it. I stuck my hand in there, grabbed the sand in the center, lifted it up, and there was an onion in my hand. No, I didn't kill it. I just observed it. It was the ants we killed. We didn't kill the ant. We just put a live one in its hole. The ants tried to escape, but the silty sand collapsed and they kept falling into the hole. And when they got to the middle, scissors would come out from inside and grab them. I watched this for a long time, but after an hour, we got bored and went around to the back of the shrine. It was a deep wooded area, and in contrast to the sun-drenched grounds, it was dank and dark. Somehow, there were dozens of balls of different sizes, stacked on top of each other, propped up against the pillars of the shrine building. Well, maybe they were scraps from the construction of something at the shrine. As far as I could tell, there wasn't much interesting about it. Yamanaka picked up one of the balls and said, "Hey, why don't we build a shrine?" I think he was talking about a regent shrine. You know how many small shrines line up along the approach to a big shrine? That's what I was talking about. And at that time, I immediately thought it sounded interesting. So we started assembling the planks together. Of course, we didn't have any nails or solid or anything. We simply buried the bottom part of the balls in the ground and put the roofing boards on top. Yamanaka wanted it to look like the roof of a triangular shrine, but that didn't work out. When the shrine was built, Yamanaka said he wanted to put up a torii gate. I thought it would be impossible, but it was surprisingly easy. I picked up as many straight branches as I could from the woods and put up 2 of them. When the torii gate was completed, it looked like a real shrine, and we were quite satisfied. Then Yamanaka said, "This is not enough. We have to put in the main image of the goddess of mercy." Well, now that I think about it, this is also the wrong word. It was really the girl Jinai. Anyway, we both looked for something that could be the sacred object, but there was no way we could find such a thing. We wandered around in the woods and found a small Geo statue at the spot where the woods exit into the rice paddies. His hood and slobber coat were tattered from exposure to the rain, and over the years, I couldn't even make out the shape of his face. Geo, Yamanaka saw it and said, "Let's make it this one," and I immediately agreed. At that time, I didn't think it was wrong to move the Geo. But after that, it was very difficult. Even though it was small, it was a stone geo, so it was very heavy. So we carried the head and the legs of the geo up the mountain to the shrine we had built. When we put it inside, I felt it looked really nice. When I tried to worship it immediately, Yamanaka said you have to have an offering. I said, well, I'll go get some bread or something. He said, no, that won't please them. Let's make an offering, too. We went back to the shrine grounds. He filled a ladle with water at the hand-watering place, dived under the shrine building with the ladle, and kneaded sand with water to make dumplings. I immediately imitated him. The dumplings were so small that they quickly collapsed and became misshapen. When we had made 5 or 6 mud dumplings, Yamanaka said, let's finish it up. Yamanaka said, let's finish it up. He buried the dumplings in the mud. He went back behind the shrine building with them and piled them up in the middle of our shrine, between the Tai gate and the Jio-san. Then I clapped my hands and prayed. I don't remember what I prayed for, but I think it was something like asking for a raise in my test score. And when it was over, Yamanaka and I both felt fulfilled as if we had completed our work. Yamanaka said, I wish I could put a bell on this. I answered, I think I have a small one at home, and we decided to come back there the next day. We played at another place for about 2 more hours that day, and Yamanaka and I parted ways. The next day, Yamanaka and I went to the shrine again. When we looked at the dumplings we had made the day before, we found that the pile had collapsed, and each dumpling had a hole in it as if someone had stuck their pinky finger in it. I wondered if Jio-sama had chewed out the dumplings and eaten their contents. Yamanaka said so, but I thought maybe the Argyoku had escaped on their own. So I attached a small bell and a simple string to it, and it became more and more like a shrine. When I pulled on the string and let it ring, I heard a voice say, not enough. What I looked around and saw Yamanaka asking me, did you just say something? I thought I heard a voice say, not enough me neither. Well, I don't know what it sounded like. I thought it was a man's voice. And I don't think it was an old man's voice. It sounded more like a child's voice. I was a little surprised when Yamanaka said that, but Yamanaka did not seem to find it strange. He said, do you want to catch some frogs and put them in the dumplings? I didn't want to do that, so I said, well, let's make some sweets or something. So we left the shrine together, rode our bicycles to a candy store, bought a bag of cheap snacks, and offered them. I paid for this, but Yamanaka looked kind of uninterested. So that day, I had brought a net and an insect cage, and we spent the whole day in the woods catching insects. Later, when I left Yamanaka and went back to my house, I met an old lady who had just come back from the field in front of her house. When she saw me, she looked a little scared and said, I don't know where you've been playing bad games. You have a black thing on your shoulder. She said, no, nothing, but catching. I showed her the basket. She said, I see, but you can't leave it like that. So she grabbed me by the collar and forced me into the house and made me sit in front of the Buddhist altar. She made me sit at the altar with her for almost an hour. Of course I didn't like it, and I didn't understand why, but I had to do it. She was just over 60 years old and worked in the fields every day, so she was much stronger than I was as a child. When she was done, she told me to stop playing around and do my homework, and gave me an allowance. The next day, Yamanaka and I went to the shrine again. Yamanaka stood ahead of me with a smirk on his face, and went around to the back, but in front of our shrine I saw a dead kitten. I thought, wow. There were holes all over the kitten's body, as if a pencil had been stabbed through it. Did you do this? I asked Yamanaka. He looked surprised. And said no, I was the one who picked up the cat's corpse and offered it as an offering, but I didn't make this hole. Look, the bag of candy you bought is just the way it was. Maybe God liked the cat and ate it. I felt sick, and my interest in the shrine suddenly waned. I asked Yamanaka, hey, let's go to the pool now, and he said, yeah, sometimes. Yamanaka was also enthusiastic and wanted to leave the place without praying. At that time, I heard the same voice again saying, "Not enough, not enough." I thought it was the same voice as before. Yamanaka and I looked around at the same time, but there was no one in sight. I ran to my bicycle, and Yamanaka followed. We cycled as fast as we could to our house, and decided to get each other's pool gear and meet up again. But that was the last time I saw Yamanaka. We loaded up our pool gear and cycled to the bus stop we had set up as our meeting place. I heard sirens and so many cars parked there. There were police cars and ambulances. A man on a stretcher was just being carried into the back of the ambulance, and all I could see was his legs, which I thought were rockety zooks in the mountains. I couldn't help myself. I didn't go to the pool. I went home. I was alone watching TV when my mother, who was out part-time, came home. She came home and said something about the child having an accident. Neighbors were talking about it, but do you know? I shook my head. I later found out that the accident was in the mountains. He was riding his bicycle behind a truck, and a load of river fell on him and hit him on the head. He died instantly. Then before supper, my grandma came back, and when she saw me, she said, "You said we shouldn't do it." She made me sit on my knees in front of the altar for 2 hours. Well, that's pretty much the end of the story. For a while after that, grandma did not go to the fields, but stayed by my side to watch over me and make me do my homework. Thanks to her, I was only able to finish my homework before the new semester during that summer vacation. Also, I was the closest person to Yamanaka at school, but I was not invited to his funeral. Yamanaka's family was a member of a new religion, and it seemed that only they held the funeral. Of course, I never told anyone, including my grandma, about what happened at the shrine. This is the first time I'm talking about it here. That shrine, a little after the summer vacation ended, I went to see it alone, scared but curious. When I went around to the back of the shrine, I found that the tiny gate we had built and the wooden shrine building were gone, but only the Gyo-sama was left there. Gio's face, which at first I couldn't make out its expression because it was so worn out, looked like it was smiling. Then I thought to myself, oh, he must have had enough.